Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So in this video we're going to react to an interview where one of our Rocket Lab people, Nico Bearcoats, actually got on an interview with Peter Beck. How awesome is that? In the Palantir community, no one has been able to interview Alex Karp or the CTO of Palantir. So it's really amazing how open Rocket Lab is to the retail investors. And Peter Beck or Adam Spice, if you want to come on this channel, you have an open invitation. Just contact me on Twitter and you're welcome at any time. And this interview, boy, it was fantastic. Nico really outdid himself and asked fantastic questions. So I highly recommend that you watch it in full. And it can only be found on Twitter as far as I could find it. So I'm going to put the Twitter link in the description box below. And some of the topics that they cover is they take up if we are really delayed with Neutron because the Archimedes engine seems to be delayed, and is that a problem or not? Peter Beck explains the bull case for Rocket Lab in a way that I've never heard it, and I became more bullish on Rocket Lab, if that is even possible. And he talks about the space infrastructure and what that entails. He talks about cash flow positivity, and it's very, very interesting. So this is going to be a beast of a video. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'm going to try to keep my commentary to the minimum, and let's get going. So let's answer the first question. Are we really delayed with Neutron because of the Archimedes engine? So here we go.
Yeah, thank you for explaining about Neutron. And I want to continue with this topic. As we can read, the schedule foresees that you want to launch Neutron the first time at the end of 2024. And as I can read at the moment, there could be only one small bottleneck that could be Archimedes, the engine of Neutron. Can you give us maybe some hints what the current status of achievement is?
Yeah, sure. I'll preface everything with it is a rocket program. We're in a honeymoon period where hardware is rich. We're hardware rich, but we're figuring out all the things that work and all the things that don't work. And I've been through this meat grinder once before. And yep, look, Archimedes propulsion is generally the long pole in the tent. I would say that if we look at the vehicle, and I'll come and answer your question, but more generally, if you look at the vehicle, where does the biggest risk lie? Actually, the bit that's innovative in the rocket is the materials and the design and the method of construction. So that's why we focused on doing the second stage tank tests first, because that is actually the highest, if not the highest risk element of the design of the vehicle. Because it's a disposable upper stage, you have competing factors that it has to be the highest performance, but also the lowest cost. And generally those two things don't go together. And we can talk about all the smart architectures that we've employed to go and do that, but I would encourage anybody to go into YouTube and have a look at some of the tank testing videos. And you can see that the tank is very large. The thing that I think most people don't realize is that whole tank weighs slightly heavier than a Harley Davidson. It's a 5 meter diameter carbon composite tank that's holding tons and tons of propellant that weighs almost nothing. And that's been a really big technical achievement for the teams, and we're happy to have that development behind us. That's the R&D part of the R&D. And then on Archimedes, we purposely chose a really high performance cycle, a closed Oxrich cycle. So generally you choose one of those cycles because you're trying to extract really high performances, really high ISPs, and really high thrust to weight. Now, we chose the highest performing cycle, but dialed it right back. And the reason why we did that is because we want these engines to be reusable. And instead of choosing like a gas generator cycle where you have to push right up to the edge of its kind of cycle performance to get the ISP you need, by choosing a really high performance cycle and dialing it back, we end up with a really robust engine. Well, that being said, one of the kind of challenges with the closed cycle engine as compared to a gas generator is you can't separate the elements out and test them individually. You can't take a gas generator and run that up and test that individually, and then take a thrust chamber and run that up and test that individually because it's all gas combustion. You really just have to build the whole engine, put it on the test stand and go. So Archimedes, it feels frustrating for me, and it probably feels frustrating for other people to watch as well, because it's no engine. And when we put something on the test stand, it's not like a dev pre-burner for a gas generator or anything. It's the whole engine. Yeah, so that is, you start to see some things that look like whole engines pretty shortly here in the next year. And like I say, the least innovative thing we're trying to have is propulsion, because we just need workhorse engines. When normal kind of stage combustion cycle engines, their operation points are, ours is vastly below a standard operation point.
So he basically said, take a chill pill. So they purposely took the highest risk parts of development and translate that to things that can cause the most delays if they don't work and have the least probability of working. And that was, for example, the second stage tank, which is really impressive that the whole thing just weighs as much as a Harley Davidson. And basically there's nothing innovative. The engine is the least innovative. And, you know, we have had rocket engines since the 60s. It's the reusable part of the rocket that is new and innovative. So he's not worried. And the reason why we don't see the rocket is because you can't test certain parts of the rocket engine. You have to sort of build the whole thing, and it takes some time. But I translate this as there is zero reason to worry that the Archimedes engine would delay Neutron. If it's delayed, it's because of something else. So now let's go on to the next part of the video, where we are going to hear the bull case for Rocket Lab like I've never heard it before. It's pretty impressive.
No, I think piggybacking off what you guys were saying, I think as an investor and thinking through the lens, we want to understand the different revenue streams. And I think that's one thing with space in general, or space companies similar to quantum or similar to some of these other kind of far out, where the basic a typical person, Joe on the street's not going to fully understand this model. So for someone like me, just trying to wrap my head around some of these different revenue models that you guys have today. So you touched on it a little bit, but can you give, I don't know, any public partnerships, or how are you guys working with your clients today? And so they're paying for you to send a satellite up to space, and just dive into that a little bit further if you could.
Yeah, we're already recognizing the strength of kind of the business model already. So, for example, a customer would come to us and ask us to build a satellite. And we'll just use one that's on orbit right now, the spacecraft that we built Pravada for their on-orbit manufacturing. Very unique capability that the spacecraft needs to deliver a lot of power to their little factory, and then we need to re-enter that spacecraft back to the Earth's atmosphere and land it in the desert somewhere. So the spacecraft itself has a lot of propulsion on board and ability to do that. If you look at that spacecraft, the spacecraft is obviously designed and built in Rocket Lab. All of the composite structures were designed and built by us. The radio was designed and built by us. The propulsion system was designed and built by us. The tanks were designed and built by us. The star tracker, the reaction wheels are designed and built by us. It's using our solar panels. It's using our software. Really, there's almost nothing on there that wasn't designed or built by us. It's using our batteries, it's everything. So when you think about being completely vertically integrated like that, the ability to innovate, come up with solutions and solve problems, and also just the speed in which you can deliver things, it's pretty unfair. And I know this for a fact because when we first started building satellites in 2019, we announced that the Photon satellite we announced, and we thought we're going to get into this. The first thing that we did was place an order for some reaction wheels and star trackers. And that was from Sinclair Interplanetary. Doug built the most beautiful jewelry, lovely stuff, 9 months. And he closed his order book in August. So if you didn't get in before August, then tough. It's a year and 9 months. So that was the first company we went and bought. We went and bought Doug Sinclair's business, and then we scaled it from 150 reaction wheels a year to 1,000 reaction wheels a year. And when it comes to building our own platforms, we never have to wait for a reaction wheel or a star tracker ever again. Like, there is no supply chain problem. And then we did that for all of the long lead expensive items in a spacecraft. Solar is another great example. So we bought a company called Solero, only one of 3 space grade solar cell manufacturers in the entire world, and the largest. solar is the most expensive, the longest lead time item on a spacecraft generally, apart from payloads sometimes. Owning that and keeping control of that is a huge advantage for us to be able to now compete and bid on much larger programs. Take the MDA Global Star constellation that we won. Very large, very complicated spacecraft, 12-year lifetimes and wallowing in radiation environments, really difficult spacecraft to build. For that particular customer, schedule was as important as technical capability. We owned all the supply chain to be able to deliver on that schedule. So we won. And we'll see that more and more frequently, I'm imagining, as supply chain and the constraint of supply of a lot of these systems is really hard. When we talk about an end-to-end space company, that's really what we mean.
So this explanation, it's pure gold. I've never heard it put in such a good way. I never heard these details before. And notice that he said that they took all the longest lead items and bought those companies. And he used the word, it's pretty unfair. And he said that they are able to go after contracts a lot more. And it's very unfair because the other guys cannot guarantee the supply chain. So this line alone made me super bullish on Rocket Lab. Not that I wasn't bullish on them before. Let's continue.
You started with different revenue streams, and I think Rocket Lab is always hinting at the desire to develop their own space infrastructure. I think that will be the next step. What is your current vision, and is it in the works? And maybe is there a planning of a mega constellation regarding photons, which will deorbit space junk?
Yeah, if you break up the space industry market, like it's about $20 billion TAM of launch. Call it $30 to $40 billion TAM spacecraft, $320 billion of TAM in space services, and all the things that basically are delivered from space. So you can see the magnitude of the market is in actually delivering the services. And if you own the launch vehicle and you have the ability to build any spacecraft you want, your ability to deliver those services is always going to be better than anybody else who doesn't have their own rocket. It's that fundamental. So yes, that's a fact. We haven't made any announcements around the infrastructure that we intend to build or any of those projects. I would say it's just a little bit early yet. We need the keys to space. We need to get Neutron functioning and flying regularly and reliably. But I would say that we're watching very closely all the different business models that are unraveling themselves in space right now. And is it direct to mobile? Is it consumer internet? What is it? What is that big application in orbit? And we're not making any announcements or any commitments as to what we're going to build just yet. But you can guarantee that we have all the capability, or will have all the capability, to execute on whatever we choose. And sometimes you have to hurry up and wait. And I think most of the time it's best to be the first mover. Some of the time it's best to be the second mover.
So it's so interesting because this topic of space infrastructure, I always talk about SpaceX. So SpaceX launch business is valued at around $20 to $30 billion without Starlink. Maybe it's a bit more now. And Starlink added $100 billion to their valuation. So 3x the valuation by itself. And, you know, when you put the details together, it's really funny because launching rockets is a very sucky business. And it's basically a race to the bottom because you have zero brand value. It really doesn't matter who is flying your load to space. What matters to you is the reliability of the rocket and the price of the rocket. And that's it. And you being able to manufacture your own space satellites is a very good business, but if you are not able to launch your space satellites, then you are depending on another company. And so Peter Beck has both these things together, and he again used the term that it's unfair or something of this sort. And I believe when they find the right thing, this like overnight could 3x the valuation of Rocket Lab, which is pretty undervalued to begin with. But because they're not giving us any clues what this can be, nobody's thinking with this. And I think that this is a major overlooked opportunity in Rocket Lab.
That's where we're sitting right now.
When I would like to go on, I'm trying to follow Rocket Lab very closely, and many times I read that one of your goals is that Rocket Lab has to be cash stable. Does that mean that your goal is to grow steadily and looking at your balance sheet, or are you planning bigger steps in the future?
This is such a good question. So he's saying, are you going to go crazy and, dilute the crap out of shareholders, or are you going to responsibly, profitably grow in the future?
We raise some more capital.
Yeah. Look, part of the reason I took Rocket Lab public was to ensure that we build a multi-generational, enduring space company. My two biggest competitors are the two wealthiest people on the planet, and that's the reality of you have to compete against. But I was determined not to end up in a scenario where when they put me in the ground, the company goes with it. And the way you avoid that is making sure you build a profitable company. There's lots of other things, culture and all of that. But at the end of the day, you have to build a profitable company. And space has a big plus and a big minus. The big plus is it's hugely aspirational. It's very easy to get excited about, and it's awesome and it's exciting. The negative side of it is that there's been way too much aspiration and not enough execution in the industry. And I'm all about execution. And so while a lot of the stuff we do is exciting, at the end of the day, we have a very keen eye on making sure that we build a profitable company that is, like I say, is multi-generational and enduring, because I want the things that Rocket Lab achieved to go on well after I'm gone. I think that's how you have the biggest impact ultimately to society, but also to shareholders. We're a little bit different in the fact that, yes, we're aspirational and we love space, but we also view it through a very keen commercial eye. And part of that is that we've always had to. If you look at the amount of funding that's gone into Rocket Lab as compared to most companies, especially launch companies, it's significantly less. If you compare it to the big ones, it's like ridiculously less. But we've always been ruthlessly efficient with the capital that we've had. And I'm not sure how many people know this, but the Rutherford rocket engine wasn't named Rutherford because he was a famous Kiwi, of course, and split the atom and all the rest of it. The reason why we named the Rutherford rocket engine Rutherford is because he had a very famous saying, and that was, we have no money, so we have to think. And that is literally the ethos of the company from day one through to day now. Is a lot of the innovations that are born about in our technical solutions because we had to think. We didn't have the capital to just go and waste willy-nilly and experiment. We had to get it right, and we had to build high-quality stuff that worked.
Yeah, that you mentioned it. I'm glad you mentioned it because that's some of the headwinds of the early innings of just like this. Who knows the capacity of the space economy? But I do think that you found like a good middle ground between like growing the top line, and you guys are anticipating potentially be free cash flow positive in 2025 as soon as that. Question for you is, unfortunately, other competitors in the space economy have struggled tremendously the past 2 years due to capital markets being extremely dry, rates potentially could be higher for longer. Do you see more consolidation happening in the space industry? And is there any kind of specific avenues that you are looking to be aggressive on potentially down the line that you guys don't have exposure to right now?
Yeah. So I challenged the start of the prefaces that there hasn't been the capital. There's never been more capital flown into the space industry than there is in the last few years. You're speaking to the guy who, a Series A round out of Kozos Ventures to build Electron was $5 million. So when I see people going and raising like 100 or hundreds of millions of dollars to go and build a rocket, it explodes my head. It's just the capital efficiency has been extremely low and the execution has been extremely poor. I would say the capital has been there for sure. There's been endless amounts of capital there. But more directly to your question, we'll keep our eyes open for value opportunities. I think you saw us earlier in the year. We picked up Virgin Orbit facilities, stunning facilities, and like we don't need to buy anything for a long time. It was just everything was there.
Bravo on that fire sale! Wow, I love that. When I read that, I was like, and I saw the cost of that. I was like, gee, that's like 75. That's what Black Friday used to be like for everyone like 5 years ago.
Yeah. No, it was you talk about disregard for capital, like the amount of capital that went in there is staggering. And it's great that it's going to be put to good use. It lives on, and it wasn't a waste. But yeah, no, I think there's in a market that is less frothy, then there needs to be execution. And I think there was a lot of promises made and very little delivered. And as a result, then this is the wonderful thing about the public markets is they're very efficient in the end, and they're very efficient at working out what are companies with a real product and with real customers and what is not.
I think the last question I'd want to ask here.
Cool. So this was the highlights from the interview. I mean, this last part is so interesting because I've been so worried about Rocket Lab needing to raise money, and like if the stock price is not up, then they will have to dilute the shareholders very much, or they will have to take a huge loan, which would not be good for the balance sheet. And first of all, we got this huge contract, and when I did the math, I was like, this is greatly going to lessen their cash flow. And on top of it, the culture that they have, and it's really true what he's saying, that some of the other competitors, like what's the Relativity space, they have launched 0 successful rockets yet, and they have like over 1,000 employees. It's almost comparable to the employees that Rocket Lab has with all the launches that they have done. And what are those employees doing? So it's definitely not a frugal way of spending the money. And I love that he said that Rutherford, the reason why they named the engine Rutherford is because he had this famous saying that we don't have money, so we have to think. So this made me even more bullish on Rocket Lab. Really a crazy good video. Please make sure you check out the full podcast. I will leave a link to it in the description box below. And if you like this content and you felt you got value out of it, then please check out the Patreon that I have. I'm going to, in the future, upload all my stocks, all my theses. Not even sure if that's how you say it. You can download, you will be able to download my tables and, put your own assumptions and see what price fits for you, because I don't want to give you financial advice. I want to just help you do your due diligence. But if you would join now, it's purely to like buy me a coffee or something. And I actually had a new member join today. So ESK0. Don't know who you are, but thank you. It's amazing. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Really well done, Nico. I envy you that you got to speak with Peter Beck, and see you guys in the next video. Ciao, ciao.